Hello everyone, this is RidinWithJ, and in today's video I'm going to be installing the Akrapovic Stainless Steel headers for my 2018 Kawasaki Z900. I would also like to thank all the viewers for watching, liking, and the comments that you've left. Really greatly appreciated. Now into the video. So a couple tools that you'll be requiring for this install will be a pick tool to attach the springs to the headers, a 22 millimeter wrench, or if you have a oxygen sensor socket, you can use that, which is also 22 millimeter, a 15 millimeter, a couple of extensions, a 12 millimeter, a 10 millimeter, a couple of 1/4 inch extensions with a 6 millimeter, 4 millimeter Allen, 10 millimeter socket, 15 millimeter socket, ratchet, and a drill if you need for speed purposes. Okay, so starting on the right side of the bike, we're going to be removing this lower fairing piece. So there's two fasteners that are holding it to the bike. There is a 6 millimeter Allen head bolt here and a 4 millimeter Allen head bolt there. So you can go ahead and get your tools. And there's just a little rubber grommet on the back side there, and it just comes right off. So using your 22 millimeter wrench, if you have, or your O2 sensor socket, you're going to be loosening your O2 sensor. I already cracked it free, so it should come off nice and easy. This is going to be removed, and it's just going to hang. And once you have it installed, it's actually going to be on the opposite side, so the left side of the bike on the Akrapovic header system. So moving along to the rear of the bike, you're going to be removing the one fastener that holds the lower portion of your exhaust onto the bike. It's a 6 millimeter Allen head bolt. It's a little tricky to get in there, so if you have an extension with a slight swivel, that will help. Now onto the front of the bike, you're going to be removing, there is 8 nuts that hold the header portion onto the bike. So there's 2 nuts on each pipe that we're going to be removing. So the nuts, they're 12 millimeters, so using your wrench, I'm going to break them free like I have already loosened them. You don't want to lose these nuts, you're going to be reusing them. And also one thing to note, I should have mentioned earlier, you're going to want to remove, there's a 10 millimeter bolt that holds the rad in place, as well as higher up there are two 10 millimeter bolts on opposite sides of the bike that you need to remove. That will give you a little bit of wiggle room on the radiator. Now that you have the 8 nuts removed from the front of the bike, you're going to want to have something supporting it. So I just have the box that the headers came with. It's actually the perfect height for the bike width on the stands so that it doesn't fall on the ground. And then moving along to the rear, I already have the Akrapovic Shorty slip-on. So if you're going from a stock to this, I'll be pretty much the same. So the removal of this nut and bolt right here, so it's a 15 millimeter, and once you remove this, then the entire exhaust will be free and can be removed from the bike. Okay, now that we've had the stock exhaust system removed from the bike, working from the front to the back, starting at the front, we're going to be installing the provided flanges. So it comes with a collar and a flange as well as a spring. So the collar is going to be put right onto the exhaust port. The flange is going to go next, making sure that you have the springs in this orientation. So for these two cylinders, you're going to have the springs to the left where these holes are, to the left, and on the other two cylinders you're going to have the springs on the right, exactly like this. You don't want these holes facing like that. It won't work. It's got to be this way. Alright, and I did apply a little bit of anti-seize just to the threads here, just, you know, if you ever have to remove it, they're not all rusted. Just one thing to note, guys, when you're throwing on the sleeve and the flange, there's actually a little lip inside the sleeve that the end of the header will actually butt up against. So you want to make sure that that little lip, you guys can see it there, is all the way to the back, so closest to the motorcycle, because if you have it flipped around this way, you won't be able to put the header pipe on due to the indent right here. Okay, so you want it to in this way, and then the sleeve and the flange go together like that. Alright, so now that we've gotten the flanges all installed correctly this time, we're going to go ahead and start installing the first section of the headers. I applied a little of anti-seize around here. It's not necessary, but just if you do have to remove it, it'd be a little bit easier for you to take it apart. You just want to line these up. Can be a little tricky. Once it's in, make sure it's in all the way. In the instructions, it does mention that you can use a rubber mallet to make sure that the header is fully seated, but as that's not entirely necessary because you can feel when it bottoms out. And then next we're going to be attaching the springs onto the exhaust using your pick tool. So what you want to do is just grab it, and this can also be done with a screwdriver, a flat blade screwdriver. It's a little tricky, but it's done just like that. Alright, and the first spring is on. So you're going to be doing the same for the rest of the headers. So attach the spring and make sure you have the springs in the correct orientation. So these two cylinders here, you're going to have the springs to the bottom left side, and the two cylinders here, you're going to have the springs attached to the bottom right side. Alright, so how to put these springs on, you're going to want to use your pick tool and grab the pick like so. And then you're going to put quite a bit of force, pull it down, and then hook it onto the header, just like that. Okay, now that the headers have been installed and the springs attached, you're still going to want to leave the flange bolts loose, the 12mm flange bolts, so that you have a little play here to attach your link pipe to. And one thing to note, that the oxygen sensor that was previously over here on the stock exhaust is actually going to be routed across the back, and it's going to be installed on the left side of the bike to the bung right here. So this just slides in, and making sure that you have the top loose makes this a lot easier. If you have tightened it, it's going to be much more difficult to attach it all together. Now that we have the header tubes attached to the link pipe, we're going to be attaching the springs, this spring and this spring, as well as this spring back here for the slip-on. So same like before, you can use your pick tool or a screwdriver and just hook it in, and It is a little bit tricky, but just apply force until you get it there, and one spring down. You can do the same for the remaining springs. Okay, so now we are on the left side of the bike, and we're going to be installing the O2 sensor into the link pipe with the provided bung. So what you want to do is actually rotate your sensor like this, so that when you thread it in, the wire isn't still twisted. And then you're gonna torque that down. Okay, now that the entire header system is now bolted up onto the bike, you're gonna want to make sure and go through to make sure that all of your fasteners are torqued down to the proper specs. So starting from the front, the 12mm flange bolts and nuts, you're going to want to make sure that these are torqued down to 16 foot-pounds or 22 Newton meters. The link pipe bolt, which is right there, you're going to want to make sure that's torqued down to 25 foot-pounds and 34 Newton meters. And you're going to want to make sure that your exhaust O2 sensor, which is on the other side of the bike, is torqued down to 29 foot-pounds or 39 Newton meters. And once you have all of these torqued down, you're going to want to go with a solution, whether it be grease and wax remover, and wipe down the entire system, because you don't want any fingerprints or oils to be on your hands, because once the bike gets hot, they'll be burnt into your pipes, and you don't really want that. You want it to look nice and new.